Another very important story, one that is unfortunately not making enough news here, in my opinion, in the United States, and that is in the state of Kansas, where the right to reproductive access is on the ballot here in the upcoming primary elections, and we are very happy to be joined by Representative Rui Xu, who is from the Kansas legislature and an advocate for reproductive rights. Representative Xu, thank you so much for being with us here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So just for people who maybe have not heard at all what is happening in Kansas, can you give us a sense of, what this ballot measure is and what people will be voting on, I believe, August 2nd?
Sure. Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of history, in 2019, the Kansas State Supreme Court ruled that there is a fundamental right to an abortion here in the state, which is somewhat surprising coming from a relatively Republican state, but that's what they ruled. And so the legislature has tried for the last several sessions to change the Constitution via constitutional amendment. So the first couple of years they tried, we had enough moderate Republicans still in the House to stave it off for a couple of years. But unfortunately, after the 2020 election, a lot of them were ousted. More conservative Republicans were elected, and they were able to cram through this constitutional amendment. So what this means is that if vote yes wins, then that means that the right to regulate or restrict or ban abortions goes back to the state legislature, which is a supermajority Republican and supermajority conservative body. If vote no wins, then the constitutional right to an abortion remains protected, albeit still regulated.
So how does the outcome, how's it looking? I assume there's been polling done. And also, I mean, it's quite interesting. I guess this is probably one of the few instances, at least that I've seen or I'm aware of, where it's actually being put to a vote. But since Kansas is quite a conservative state, I'm assuming that it's likely to be a vote against abortion.
It's actually pretty close. All the polling that I've seen and just kind of in my district walking around, I think it's going to be fairly close and it's going to be a turnout game. I think if you would have asked me before the Dobbs decision, I think it would have passed fairly handedly. I think after the Dobbs decision, I think you're seeing a very, very large coalition, one that you might not expect being very, very outspoken. So obviously you have your traditional pro-choice Democrats who are especially motivated to come vote for this. But then you have, dads of daughters, or you have Republican women who have had pregnancy issues. You have lots of people who do not want a ban on abortion. And our neighboring state, who is our primary rival in Missouri, have passed essentially a full ban. And so we have seen stories come out from the entire metro area on what that can mean. And that is a deeply, deeply unpopular position, even in Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, in a way, I think an interesting question, Representative, is that, so much of the conversation, I think, around this issue is about, obviously, the things that are happening at the Supreme Court, but also kind of the minoritarian nature of many of these decisions. So it seems like this actually is a very interesting opportunity for the country writ large. I mean, obviously, you guys are in Kansas, but I think the reason so many people are looking to what's happening here is it feels like this is almost a chance for everyone who supports the right the right to choose on this issue to have their voice heard, potentially, because it's been these very sort of elite minority institutions that have addressed it so far.
Sure, and just to give you guys even more historical context, this is not the first time that Kansas has had a statewide vote on a civil rights issue. Kansas is actually one of the only states that actually got to vote on the right or not to have slavery or not. Way back when we were becoming a state, and it was much like now, very fraught. Emotions were running very high, but there's a saying here locally that how Kansas goes, so does the nation. And so we are the very first state post-Dobbs decision to have a statewide referendum on abortion. And yeah, like you said, I would say that the majority opinion here in the state is probably the status quo. We have access to abortion, but it is heavily regulated. And most people want that, even Republicans. I would say if you want a full ban on abortion, feel free to vote yes, whatever. That's what the state legislature is going to do. I know my colleagues, they are certainly going to try to do that. But if you're okay with the status quo, if you are afraid of a full ban like we've seen in Missouri and Ohio and Texas, then vote no.
One thing I want to ask you, too, as a follow-up that I think is interesting about this and another sort of Kansas issue is I remember a few years ago when there was this just massive budget cutting that was going on in the state of Kansas, which then ended up backfiring and creating more momentum around, the need to actually have support for critical social programs in the state. So does this feel like this is also an opportunity to just build generally momentum in a more progressive direction in the state?
Of course. As a progressive Democrat in Kansas, we're always looking for chances to do that. And this is a chance to engage with voters who maybe traditionally have not voted Democrat. But over the last 10 years, we've gotten 10 years of Brownback into Chris Kobach, into Donald Trump. And we have a lot of very educated, very smart, moderate Republicans in the state looking around saying, I don't know where I am. My party is moving completely away from me. I can't tell you how many voters in my district, I knock on their doors. There's R's on both sides of the family, and they're saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know where my party went. And so I'm saying, hey, we're here for you. We'll stand up for what's right, and we'll do the right thing. So, come with us.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, how Kansas goes, so does the nation. And I'm wondering, what do you think could be the impact on the surrounding states, on the country in general, if this does go in the direction of protecting access to reproductive rights?
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the frustrating things for me being in the Kansas legislature is how often I hear, we're going to be 47 in the country to do something. We're going to be 46 in the country to do something. It's the lack of ambitions that's frustrating to me. What this allows us to do is be one of the progressive leaders in the country if we are able to vote no on this. We are able to be a harbinger for the other red states with Democrats and other pro-choice citizens who do not want full bans, where we can be a beacon of hope. And that's really exciting to me. I'm sure you guys have seen several stories coming out of Kansas and the metro area in the last couple of years. We brought this huge Panasonic plant here to Kansas to build EV batteries. We're bringing the World Cup here to the Kansas City metro. And all of a sudden, we can do enough. If we can do enough, we can be a beacon of hope for the other red states in the Rust Belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me tell you, I lived in D.C. for 15 years. People were very upset about that World Cup, but Kansas City is strong soccer city. People need to know that. But no, I think that's a really good point you make. And one of the things I'm also curious about in terms of the Vote No campaign is just what does it look like? What does the grassroots energy look like? I mean, some of what I've heard is that people are really getting out, and burning the shoe leather up, as it were, in terms of working for this.
The energy is quite frankly unbelievable. We're having daily canvases. We're having daily phone banks. If you guys want to join in any of that, go to kansansforfreedom.com if you want to join us on that front. But the energy in this area, especially in the Kansas City metro, is tremendous. And as you can expect, the urban areas, the suburban areas as well. What we need to do is do well enough in the rural areas, and that's an area that phone banking is really helpful as well. And then so if you want to help us, please do. But I can tell you from my district, which is a pretty blue district at this point, but with Republican areas of it, I would say just by a sign game, signs don't vote, I know, but just by the sign game in my area, it's probably 15-1, 20-1 vote no to vote yes. So if we can keep that up in the urban areas, if we can get close enough in the rural areas, there's a shot there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I hear you 100%. I think that this is very interesting when you look at the polling. I think it'd be very close. Real quick before we let you go, Representative, just give those websites once again for people who may be watching who do want to get involved there on the ground in Kansas.
Yeah, go to kansansforfreedom.com. You can just Google Kansans for constitutional freedom. That's the kind of advocacy group for the vote no. And then we could sure use your help. We got 2 more weeks and the polls are close. So we need every single phone call or door knock that we can get.
Mm-hmm. Representative Rui Xu from the Kansas State Legislature, thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you.